You are listening to the Unsoberly Sober Show. I'm your host, Magnify Maggie. This podcast will turn your perception of going sober upside down. We're going to be working from the inside out to get you that dream life. So make sure you stick around for the end of the episode where I'm going to walk you through our weekly positive pursuit exercise to begin rewiring that beautiful mind, baby. Hello, my free and powerful friend. We are back with the Unsoberly Sober Show. I'm your host, Magnify Maggie, and today's topic, I will say it steps on some toes. It can ruffle some feathers because it is something that the sobriety space really conditions you to believe is not possible, and will also kind of tell you that you're stupid for trying. This topic is moderation. And this is actually something that I would consider one of my specialties to help clients with, because to be honest, I think most people desire the ability to moderate and be in control of something rather than living a life where they say, I cannot have any of that because I have a problem. So today's topic really is talking about it in a new way and a new perspective towards moderation, because I know when I look back on what I thought was moderation when I was drinking, it was, I don't drink until 5 p.m. or I only drink on the weekends, or, I have one drink and then I have a water, and then I have another drink and then I have a water, and I stagger that out. And yes, is that moderation compared to having, say, 50 drinks a week? For sure. But I think that there is a more valid way to go about moderation that can actually open up the new lifestyle to where you are a take it or leave it type person. But here's the thing. It can be very difficult to go from a daily drinker, binge drinker, even a social drinker that overindulges every weekend. It's very hard to go from that, cut back, and straight into being the type of person that only has one or two. Why do I say that? Because as you cut back alcohol, you're going to be going through withdrawals and continuing to give yourself a taste of it throughout. You never actually experience the benefit of living without alcohol long enough to be able to look at alcohol as unnecessary. So it's kind of like, I want to moderate, but I'm holding on to it as something precious. In order to moderate, you actually have to become the type of person that does not view alcohol as something precious or romanticized. So as we talk about this, I want to lay out a little bit of a metaphor that I think everybody here can probably relate to. I want you to think about one of your, if hopefully you only have one of your toxic exes, toxic ex-boyfriend, toxic ex-girlfriend. And I want you to think about how you felt about them before you realized they were toxic. I can speak to practically every relationship that I had before I married my amazing husband. I don't know how I lucked out and found him. But before that, my history is full of toxic exes. And when I look back at my relationship in the time that they were occurring, I saw nothing wrong with them. Sure, they have a bad temper. Sure, they can't hold a job because they think everything is wrong with other people in their job. Sure, they drink just like me, but that kind of gives me an excuse to stay the same. All of these things that were occurring during the relationship, overlooking the issues that are obviously staring you in the face, you overlook that because for some reason there is this romantic tie. And what I'll say is that, for people that have struggled with adversity, usually you do attract a lot of toxic partners because there are parts of you that need to be validated, voids within you that need to be filled. And these partners do that for you. It's not that they're great people. It's not that they have good jobs, that they're disciplined, that they have emotional regulation. No, it's usually the opposite of those things, but they do something for you. And in my toxic ex relationships, it was always that, they were completely obsessed with me and how I looked. And growing up as somebody who was a nerd, I had a bowl cut, I had buck teeth, I had glasses. I was always teased about the way that I looked. As I got older and I learned how to do my makeup and my hair, I would basically fall in love with the first person that told me I was pretty. And it didn't matter if they didn't have a job or if they were violent or emotionally abusive. It did not matter if these things happened because they were filling that void that I needed. I would overlook all of the tumult, all of the volatility, all of the just crazy extreme circumstances, cops being called, they got multiple DUIs and fled the scene. All of these kind of red flags of like, wow, this person may not be a good choice. I was romantically and emotionally involved with them because they gave me something that I was willing to overlook that. And in the moment of being in the relationship with them, I loved them dearly. At least so I thought. I thought that they were the person for me. I thought that I was going to get married to one or two of these people that I'm talking about. Thank goodness something happened to where that relationship crumbled. And in the immediate aftermath of the crumbling of the relationship, it felt like withdrawal. It felt like, who am I without this partner? Who am I? I would give anything to go back to that relationship. I would give anything to have that person in my life again. And that's how it feels maybe, moments after the breakup. The day after, the week after, maybe the month after. Maybe you're still vying for them and maybe your heart still yearns for them and maybe your mind still goes back and recalculates all of the beautiful, quote unquote, beautiful memories that you had with them. But as time continues, let's say 5 months down the line, a year down the line, if you have spent that time creating a new identity outside of that relationship, if you have spent time bettering yourself in some way, creating new healthy relationships, well, then there's going to come a point where you look back on that relationship and you're like, whoa, I don't know what I was thinking. That person was obviously not a healthy person to have in my life. That person was obviously not meant for me. Thank goodness I went through the hard time to break up to finally eventually be free of them. And then guess what? Maybe a year down the line, you have become so free of them. You have created this alternative identity to the point where you walk into a room and you see them there. And it does not faze you. Because you have not spent the past year wishing to be back in their life, wishing for them to love you again. You have not spent the past year groveling over how you could have changed things and wishing that you could just be back to where you were, romanticizing that romance that actually probably didn't really exist. No, you've spent that time doing other things. And when you are faced with them again, they do not hold that emotional power over you. You no longer feel romantically involved with them. Well, I argue that alcohol and you have or had that same romantic relationship. Alcohol did something for you or currently does something for you to fill that void, to meet that need. No, alcohol can't tell you you're pretty, but it can make you feel prettier. You're probably not. I know I look back at pictures when I was drunk, all full face of makeup, hair done, extensions, and I'm like, ooh, that was not very pretty. But it can make you feel prettier, right? Alcohol will sometimes help you feel funnier. Alcohol will help you feel relaxed. But here's the thing. You can learn how to do all of those things without it. So let's say you shelve alcohol. You say, no, I'm not going to drink for the next month. 3 months, or maybe you just say indefinitely. I'm just going to figure it out down the line. I'm just, for right now, alcohol's not serving me. I'm going to break up with it. In the first few weeks, it's going to feel the same way as the breakup with the toxic ex. You are going to yearn for it. You are going to long for it. You are going to wish and hope that you could just be the person that could have alcohol in your life and be normal and moderate it. You're going to wish for all of these things. But how do you push through that without going back, jumping back in bed with alcohol? Just like sometimes in my past, those breakups weren't permanent. I jumped back in, but while I was still emotionally distraught, heartbroken, I said, I can't take this anymore. I'm going to go back. And instead of going back, what if you pushed through those hard times and you said, every time I think about them or alcohol, whatever the case, if we're thinking about toxic exes or alcohol, instead of thinking about that, I'm going to think about myself, what I think about me, who I am, what I enjoy. And you start to build that life and that identity outside of that relationship with alcohol. Here's what happens. A month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year passes by where you've created a new identity. In this new identity, if you were to be in a room with alcohol, it does not faze you. You can actually, in the metaphor of, being around your toxic ex, after you've built a new identity, you've healed, you've spent time by yourself, getting to know yourself, you can go back in that room with your toxic ex and you can even engage with them. You could have a pleasant, cordial conversation where you're not getting emotionally involved. You're not wishing you could be with them, but you can be polite in your room of friends and they happen to be there. You can be polite. You could also choose to ignore them. That's up to you. But relating that to alcohol, after you have spent time creating a new identity, then you could go back to alcohol, revisit your old friend, even have that cordial conversation, aka one drink, and what you will find is that you do not like it as much. You actually probably won't like it very much at all because now you've created a new baseline. Your baseline when you were drinking was at an all-time low. So when you drank, of course, it knocked you up a few notches, right? But when you spend time without alcohol, your baseline is lifted. And then if you drink, it actually bumps you down because you're in higher vibes than what you were even when you were drinking beforehand. So your baseline shifts. And when you revisit it, you start to say, I don't know why I was so infatuated with that. I don't really know why I needed that so much. Just like that conversation with the toxic ex or being faced with them again. You say, wow, I'm so glad the wool is pulled out from over my eyes. I used to just love them blindly, and now I can see all of the reasons that we weren't meant to be. And you could say, you know what? I have no hard feelings for them. I forgive them. We were crazy. We were young. We were wild. We were drunk most of the time. You can say, I forgive them, just like you have that energy for alcohol. It's not that you have to hate it and say, oh, I did not like that. I revisited it and I moderated it, but I did not like that. You can just say, that's not what I need anymore. But when you take that time off, then you can say with fresh eyes, I actually don't need that. Whereas if you start to try to moderate and cut back from the position of having a full-on romantic relationship with alcohol, it's very hard to break up with it to the point that you're actually successful at moderating. Because if you think about the breakup with your toxic ex, if you were to go back every weekend and hang out with them, jump into bed with them, then you're going to maintain that emotional attachment and that identity to them. And the breakup, you're going to be stringing it along even more, or you're going to be forcing yourself to make the relationship actually work when you know it shouldn't be working. But those emotions are just so strong, you keep going back. That's how a lot of times moderation feels if you haven't taken that time off first. So I know this is a little backwards because a lot of people think moderating is going from 50 drinks a week, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually pretty standard for the normal problematic drinker, about 50 units a week. Well, if you were to keep going back time and time again, you're never going to break up with it. But if you go from 50 drinks a week and you never have that time off, you cut down to 40, you cut down to 30, you cut down to 20. Yes, this is helpful. This is called harm reduction. You're reducing the harm that alcohol has on your body, but you're still holding on to this perception that you need it in some way. So in order to successfully moderate, you actually have to shift that perception that you don't need alcohol. And how do you do that? By having a season where you learn and you grow into the type of person that doesn't use alcohol for every sticky situation, every single celebratory situation, every bored moment, every excited moment. You start to go through a season without that and discover how you can do those things without alcohol. So then if that calls to you later on, you only have one. And it does not feel the same. Listen to Andrew Huberman talk about this. I think it's really fascinating when he talks about, people struggling with alcohol use disorder, the state that they're in when they typically drink. They're very nervous. They're strung up. Their cortisol levels are through the roof. So the way that the dopamine reacts with that is that it brings you to an all-time high. And that's why it feels so darn good, because you're drinking from that really, really low state. Whereas if you have an alcoholic beverage, when you're in a regulated state, a great healthy baseline, a good mindset, you're relaxed, you know how to emotionally regulate yourself, then it does not feel the same. It actually kind of makes you sleepy, and you're just like, ugh. You kind of sink in and you're just like, okay. And so that's really the freedom that comes with moderation if you do it the right way. You have to lay off the sauce for a while if that is your goal down the line. But here's the beautiful thing. Sometimes, and a lot of Magnify clients actually come to me because their goal is to be the take it or leave it type person. But a lot of times what happens is we go through that breakup, what I call an alcohol vacation. You just take a vacation from alcohol. They have this goal of like, okay, at the end of the 12 weeks or maybe in 6 months, I want to reintroduce alcohol and I want to be able to have a drink with my partner or at a work function. What happens a lot of times is that we get through the 12 weeks or however long, and then they say, it was really important to me to be able to moderate when I started, but now I love my life so much that actually sounds really pointless. And I think this is the beauty of giving yourself freedom to not really have like, I'm going to be sober forever, but just have like an open-ended due date kind of thing. It's like, I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep building my healthy identity, practicing new habits, learning about myself, getting involved in whatever my definite major purpose is, getting involved in development. Then you actually just don't want it. You just don't want the alcohol the same way. And it's really, really mind-blowing. And I know a lot of people that listen to me talk about moderation, they say, you're dangerous, you're going to hurt somebody. But in all actuality, from what I've seen with this system, is that if anybody goes back to drinking, they only have maybe a handful of drinks. And that's a lot. That's a lot coming from what I'm trying to think of all of the clients that have ever, chatted with me about reintroducing their alcohol. They usually stop at 1 or 2. And I see this as a vital way of relapse prevention. If you learn to fall out of love with alcohol and make alcohol irrelevant, then okay, you can have a drink, but stop there. If for some reason you're just curious and you want to see how it goes, or you're feeling maybe like you're left out, of course, that's a subconscious program that you can work on, just like confidence. But maybe you are feeling left out of your friend group and they all ordered a glass of wine and you would love to have a sip or love to have a glass with them. Okay, that's your right. If you choose to do that, that's your right. But wouldn't it help and behoove you to learn how to have that one drink and stop? Absolutely. And that's the magic of learning moderation, but kind of turning moderation on its head. Instead of cutting back gradually and then trying to just limit it at 2 drinks without having that alcohol vacation, take the alcohol vacation so that if you revisit that toxic ex, you can be cordial. You can have a brief conversation. You can even smile at them and just have good energy around them. You don't even have to talk to them, but you can, in your own energy and your own essence, be okay with their existence. I think that's really powerful. I've mentioned this before, but my mom was never able to be okay in her own essence and existence if alcohol was around, because it was all about abstinence. And if I have one, I'm going to have 20. And if I have one, I know I'm going to end up blackout drunk. And that's really what that time is devoted to in the breakup phase of alcohol, in the alcohol vacation phase, is learning to diminish those self-image prospects, those self-image potentials, those beliefs that we have of, once I have one, I'm going to have a bunch. I think that, the shift in perception of what's the point of having one drink. This is something I work really intensely with clients that do want to eventually reintroduce alcohol. We have to learn to look at alcohol as the intention is not to get drunk. And a lot of people will joke about this on the internet. I've had very funny conversations. So they're like, what's the point of having a drink? The point of drinking is to get drunk. And I would say to those people, you probably have a very hard time moderating. You probably have a very hard time controlling it, because your entire intent with using alcohol is to be drunk, intoxicated, lose control, relax your inhibitions to the point that there are 0 inhibitions. But there is something about being able to have one drink. It's, first of all, I'm the type of person that has control, that has self-control. I'm the type of person that controls how much of something I put in my body and what I put in my body. And I think for most people that struggle with overindulgence, lack of self-control with alcohol, they don't want sobriety. They want to learn control. And in learning control, you have to learn how to look at alcohol differently. It is not a savior. It is not something that is going to make everything better. It's not something that's going to de-stress you long term. It's not something that's all the time fun, because if I look back at the times that I thought were fun with alcohol, they were actually littered with embarrassing, painful stories, like painful physically falling down, breaking fingers, scratching up my face, losing my debit card, having my purse stolen, getting lost in a foreign city. These are things that I classified as fun. And now I'm like, wait, that was not actually fun. But I didn't learn that perspective shift until my time away from alcohol. And everybody's time away from alcohol will be different. I don't think that it's true that time heals all on its own. So somebody could spend a year off of alcohol doing a whole lot of nothing, but sitting around thinking about alcohol, they would have a hard time reintroducing it. But if somebody spent 12 weeks working on themselves, they spent that time wisely, then potentially, if they decide and they plan and they execute, they could shift their perspective enough in order to go back into a drinking experience and control themselves. And I think for most people, that is what they want. So in closing, I'm going to lay out kind of I would say, again, out of the box exercise for this week. And I think that this is something that I used initially for alcohol, but then I started to track other things that once alcohol was, off the table, I started to notice some other kind of, not self-sabotage, but coping mechanisms, distractions and things coming through. And I would use this exercise for those as well. So really anything that you consider to be something you get yourself involved in that you don't like, let's track the frequency and become aware of how much we are doing something, how much time we are spending in these activities. I mentioned last episode that paradigms control our habitual behavior. They're mental programs that control all of our habitual behavior. And paradigms specifically have a lot of control over our use of time. I think I'm going to do a whole episode devoted on this very soon. But I want you to start taking accountability and becoming aware on your use of time. For instance, it might sound bonkers to you to not drink on a Friday night. That's a paradigm. It might sound crazy for you to skip the mimosa brunch on Saturday morning. That's a paradigm. You are habitually doing that, so not doing it sounds weird, wild, lame, stupid, all of those things. So anyway, so looking at a calendar, we become conditioned to break up our time in week blocks, right? So if you look at a calendar, there's 4 blocks of 7 days, and they are stacked one on top of the other. This visual, although helpful and organized, of course, this visual tricks us into really looking at a week as being a pretty significant amount of time. In relation to our lifetime, though, a week is not that much, right? And then calling attention to the people that are, I'm a healthy moderator, I only drink on the weekends. That probably feels like a good amount because you're like, a week? I mean, 7 days? There's only 4 blocks of 7 days in a month. So you start to like rationalize, and this is really weird mindset thing. You start to rationalize like, well, Monday through Thursday is a really long time to, put in the effort. And by Thursday, Friday, I just need to escape. And I've been working so hard for the past 3 to 4 to 5 days. It's like, well, actually, that's not that much time and that's not that consistent. So if you are, sober Monday through Thursday and then drinking Friday, Saturday, maybe you're even sober on Sundays. Maybe you're over the Sunday fun day thing, but maybe you only drink 2 times a week. That doesn't seem like a lot when you look at the week in our regular calendar block view. But what I want you to do, getting straight to the point here after all of that, what I want you to do is take a sheet of paper and flip it landscape view. So it's wide. Is that the hamburger view? And draw a line across the middle of that paper. And then break that line up into 31 little blocks, or maybe even 31 just little tallies, 31 little dashes. And what this does is it represents the month in one straight view. Now, from that perspective, for the next month, go ahead and mark off the days that you are involved in the activities that you do not want to be involved in anymore. And of course, we're talking about drinking here, but I use this, like I said, once alcohol was shelved, I used this days that I wanted to hole up in Netflix and binge. I started saying, oh, if I do that every Saturday, it's not that bad. And then I looked at my 31 days and I was like, that's a lot of my time out of my 31 days. If it's binge eating, oh, well, I only do it 3 times a week. Okay, well, look at your 31 days. If you're doing it every 3 to 4 days for 3 days in a row, that's actually a pretty significant amount of your 31 days that you can see sequentially in one straight line. But if you go back to your drinking, let's say every 3 to 4 days, you have 2 to 3 circles or X's or checks, and that's when you drink. And you start to see that it's happening maybe every 3 to 4 days for the entire month. You start to see that it's not actually not that often. You say, oh, this is actually taking up 40 to 60% of my time. This is actually taking up 40 to 60% of my energy. And it starts to help you understand frequency, and it could also help you cut back in order to get yourself to the point where you're ready for an alcohol vacation. So maybe you see yourself having a drink for the first 15 days, having a drink every other day. and you're like, wow, that's too many checks on my block, too many checks out of my almost 31 days now. So then the latter half of that month, you start to aim to just have maybe every 5 days. Every 5 days is checked off. And you'll see how those check marks becoming less frequent increases your confidence. And it starts to help you see that, okay, I can use my time in different ways. Look at how I'm investing all of this time into my drinking behavior, which I'm not super proud of anyway. How could I invest my time in something that would make me proud? How could I use my time so that I sleep better and I eat better and I move better and maybe I'm learning things and I'm getting out in my community doing volunteer work or going to the library and finding a group class, a group meeting, something fun to do. When you start to use your time differently, it starts to sound really crazy to have so many blimps on your map of 31 days devoted to drinking. And that use of time, that awareness around your use of time will also help you solve problems. So here's what I find is that people who are like, yeah, I moderate and I do really good at it, but God, I'm so tired all the time. God, I can't lose this final 5 or 10 pounds. I'm so stressed. I have so much anxiety. I think I'm going to go to my doctor and get more medication, get an up on my prescription for my anxiety medication, things like that. You start to kind of become aware of where those things are stemming from. If you're like, I'm so tired all the time, or I never have time to do anything. And then you look at your map of 31 days all in one straight line, and you see that the majority of those days are spent drinking, it will start to click in your brain. Wow. All those things that I'm complaining about, I could solve if I spent less time doing this. So that is your exercise this week. If you do this, I would love for you to send me a picture of your piece of paper. You don't have to have started your check marks or anything, but send me a picture of your piece of paper, of your map of 31 days that you're going to track to become more aware of how you use your time, and send it to me on Instagram. I'm not sure if you can post pictures. I don't think so in the comments of YouTube, but let me know if you're watching this on YouTube. Let me know. I've got my sheet of paper done. I'm tracking. I want to make sure that you guys are using this, and that if you need any help, you know I am here for you. I love to chat. I love to help. I love to know what's going on for you, because again, here I'm talking in general terms. Everything should be customized to your life, just like nutrition we talked about in last episode. Like everything is individual. I do speak in broad, generic terms a lot, and all of this information can be customized and tailored to you so that you get the most out of your time, your energy, your quality of life, all of the above. So I can't wait to hear how this exercise goes for you. I hope you've enjoyed our little metaphorical conversation on toxic exes and the toxic ex that is alcohol for a lot of people. And I just want to let you know that if you are struggling in a romantic relationship with alcohol right now, there can be a point down the line where you look back and you say, gosh, that was a toxic ex and I couldn't see it at the time, but I'm so glad that I sat through the feelings of the breakup and worked on myself. And now looking back, I can see why I was in love with it and why I'm not in love with it anymore. All right, guys, signing out. Remember, think different to drink different or never again. It all goes down in the mind. Keep me posted. I can't wait to hear from you. It's Magnify Maggie. See you later. It means the entire world to me that you have been here with me, letting me share my experiences and hopefully helping open your eyes to a bright, beautiful life ahead of you as well. So if you are loving this show, please, please, please subscribe, like, comment, and especially share this with somebody that might be in need. Please help get the word out. Word of mouth is so important, and I know that you're somebody special who can help me in this mission for thinking differently in order to drink differently or never again. Make sure you reach out if you have any questions you want discussed on the podcast. I'm here for it. So I'll talk to you soon. Signing out, Magnify Maggie.